Hello, welcome to Truth and Transparency. It's a bright one today. Woo! Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. On the docket tonight. Oopsies. Sorry about that. A little feedback there. On the docket this evening is Mr. JP. We're just going to call him Mr. JP. Mr. John Paul. So that's who, that is what is on the docket tonight. Give you guys a chance to get in chat, love. Prepping some last minute documents. So happy Monday night. Dom's mom, welcome back. Gina, Mike, dropping mama. Hello, 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 hello. All right. Those of you guys not paying attention in chat, love, welcome as well. Again, just give you guys a couple minutes here to get live, get with us. Let's put my glasses on for this one. Let's get it going. Whew. Alrighty. What's good in the hood? This thing is not working the right way. All right. Okay. Make sure we're kind of in chat, love. I thought I unblocked. Let me make sure I unblocked the Beaver Countyan. So let me make sure that I did this correctly. Let's see. Again, we're going live here this evening to talk about I guess you could say tragedy pimping / we're going to talk about just what Beaver County has gone through as far as the media goes, as far as who's talking about what's being talked about, how it's being talked about, why it's being talked a certain way. Is it biased? Is it not biased? We're going to just lay it all out there. And how tonight's episode is going to go, it's going to be basically like I have John Paul here with me, and I'm going to just interview him. I think that it's like one of those situations where, you know, when the news gets interviewed, when people that are newsworthy get talked about, get asked questions. So I think a lot of people in Beaver County have a lot of questions. If they don't, they should. And hopefully this episode opens up some eyes as to why they should. So let's do it. Ooh, ooh. if you guys don't know it, John Paul is referred to as JP, but he is the founder of the beavercountyan.com. It is a website where you must be a member to be able to see articles. So it's like reading the paper. You know how you have to pay for the paper? It's the same thing. You're going to pay for this content, okay? So if I was to have John Paul here with me right now, I would be introducing him to the audience. I would say everybody be kind and chat love to my guest. And how this would begin is I would ask John Paul if he wants to talk about his background, you know, where he's from, how did he get to the Beavercountyan, how did he get to where he is today, and all those good things. With that being said, I'm going to answer some of that for him. And again, he can correct me if I'm wrong. But a couple of the questions that I would have asked, again, tell us about your upbringing. Are you from Beaver? Which he is. Where'd you attend school? He went to Pitt. He dropped out, not because of lack of intelligence, so don't get that twisted. John Paul is not an idiot. He is a very intelligent human being. Give you props for that. So just because he isn't walking out of Pitt with a degree, John Paul is no dummy. Again, I could say, oh, what made you leave school? And I'm sure he's going to say the words, I was bored. So if he wouldn't say those words, he can feel free to type in as John Paul himself. John Paul, I noticed that like your parents, they're not married. How was your relationship with your mother? How was your relationship with your father? Do you look at either of those parents as role models at any point in time in your life? To which I would let him, you know, answer. I noticed that you don't talk about your father much, and just curious if that's off limits to talk about. If it is, then we can move past it. I see that your mom was remarried, and that brings us to, you are from Beaver, so you do have ties to the community. It says here in my research that you started a online website. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that back before you got the Beavercountyan? And whether or not Mr. Paul wants to talk about that, that's up to him. But I would say, whether or not he wants to talk about it, I want to talk about it, because it is relevant to everything that has to do with tonight's episode. So I would say, Mr. Paul, I'm going to bring us here to a article that was written October 8th, 1999. Trackers of hackers goes from friend to foe. Again, October 8th, 1999. Just curious about, I mean, this is John Paul here. Again, this was in October of 1999. So I would ask him questions about going from being a hacker to going to helping the FBI to going to where the hackers accused you, Mr. Paul, of, where was it? Here in this lovely article that I will be giving props to. Right here. John Paul now has little standing among the hackers. At this convention in Las Vegas in July, a wanted poster circulated bearing JP's picture and calling him a narc. Does he have any comments on that as far as, again, hacker, then going and working for the FBI, being of, you know, right here, Special Agent Jim of the FBI said that the agency does not comment on whether it has investigated someone in the past, but we continue to consult Mr. JP, and that should say something about our assessment of his talents. He has a tremendous amount of knowledge in areas of security and hacking. He's really impressive once you get to know him and talk to him. JP said he is still keeping a keen eye on hackers. He and his one full-time employee at the time lurk in hacker chat rooms under assumed names, looking to profile hackers and their motivations and methods. He said the way to catch hackers is to understand them as individuals and as a group, not necessarily to comb through evidence left on their computer. I don't want to be an expert in the gun, okay? I want to be an expert in the people who pull the trigger. So, again, this is from 1999, and it is basically an article talking about how John Paul was once a hacker. Go and help the FBI. Now, Mr. Paul, did you have no choice into how you decided to ultimately help the FBI? Were you in trouble and you turned, hey, either you're going to help us or we're going to arrest you type of situation? Or was it just, one day you said, I want to be a good guy? I mean, how did that happen? And again, I would let Mr. Paul go ahead and speak on behalf of, someone that's called a narc. That's going to be someone that, to save their own ass is coughing up, and here I'm going to teach you what I did and how I did and how the people are doing it. I help you, you help me, and we call it that type of business. So, Mr. Paul, was that your type of relationship with the FBI? Again, he could say, I have no comment on this. I don't want to comment on it. Sounds good. Either way, moving on. Mr. Paul, I also noticed that it wasn't just that, article. There were other articles that people did some written work on you. Vanity Fair did a piece. Invisible Enemies. And again, it's about hackers. So, Invisible Enemies. Again, this is June 2000. So right after the publication, then you got this Vanity Fair article. The author navigates the shadows of cyberspace and connects with a 21-year-old former hacker who has become the Sherlock Holmes of the internet and one of law enforcement's key weapons in a virtual war, where friends and enemies are often indisguisable. The attacks are increasingly costly and the tactics can be brutal. So again, this is an article that was written June 2000. You guys can go ahead and, read it up. I guess the one thing that I would want to ask about from this article is right here. Again, and this was in 2000. It's mostly kids, self-trained kids doing it. And so we get these crash investigations where basically any of our guys with any computer experience at all gets thrown in it, says Special Agent Mark he's from the Pentagon. Which is why the FBI now consults, this was at the time in 2000, now consults JP on most major hacking cases. He's a knowledgeable guy, confirms Jim is in this article again, of the Bureau's New York press office. I can tell you our people think he's provided some useful information. Okay, so Mr. JP, that's just going to bring me to my first set of questions tonight that really has to do with why people follow. I think it's undeniable that you do have the ability to hack and to get into people's computers and IP addresses and all that good stuff that I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I can do those things. Give you props for it, amazing, awesome. But my question is, when Rachel Del Tondo and Sheldon Jeter Jr.'s information, private security numbers, you name it, secured from the FBI database / police files, how do you reckon that happened? And then my next question is it possible that you could have hacked into the Aliquippa Police Department's, and is that a possibility? And the answer to all of this is yes, that is a possibility. No, I didn't do it. Yes, it's a possibility. Or he could say, oh, yeah, I did it. But bottom line is that this is what your forte is, getting information, hacking, and being able to do all this stuff. So let's say that you didn't do it. I think that you would have the ability to see who did with the metadata. So my next question is that when this all went down and this information was leaked to you via an email, what did you do in terms of taking the pictures that would have been sent to you, if they were, PDF? I'm not sure exactly what you were sent, but what did you do to figure out where they came from? Did you help the police like you helped the FBI back in 2000 to figure out how this all went down? Now, the other thing is that you waited a month to 6 weeks to ever talk about this breaking news, which included an incident report with a minor at the time. Not at the time, but it got leaked because Sheldon wasn't a minor then. But when this incident happened, Sheldon was a minor. So my question is did you at any point think to yourself, holy shit, whether or not anything happened in that vehicle, Sheldon was underage? Let me do that. And whether or not, again, anything happened, which according to the police was no, nothing happened. That's why there wasn't anything written up. Could you, in fact, hack the database of the police department? Could you, in fact, hack in there and actually make a report yourself? Could you make a report that maybe was never made? Could you make one? Like, well, how good are your abilities? I'm not saying you did. I'm asking, could you? Are your abilities that good that you could make a report? Okay. Moving on. So because it was after this leakage, Mr. Paul, that in a sense, Rachel Del Tondo came to you and started talking to her. She started talking to you. It was after this leak. If you do the math on everything, the leak of this incident report happened in October, late October, beginning of November of 2017. Then she was put on suspension with pay from her job in November, at the beginning of November, like November 6th. And then you have December, January, February, March, April, May is when she was murdered. So Miss Del Tondo became, what you would call a source for your publication and started talking to you after this leak happened. Her mother went public with that and said that, So my question is to you, was Frank Catropa a source of yours, and then you got then his ex-fiance as well as a source? Because my sources say that Frank Catropa has been a source of yours for some time. So you had Frank Catropa as a source, and that would be the ex-fiance of then Rachel Del Tondo, who's coming to you and quote unquote telling you that she is in fear of her life. And that brings you to a couple questions when she told you she was in fear of her life, and that if the information that she gave you was true, that it would be very problematic for Frank. Did you have any reason to not believe Rachel when she told you that she was A, in fear of her life, but B, telling you about things? Did you ever have any inkling that you should not believe her, that she'd be lying? Did you ever call Cyber School of Pennsylvania to inquire why they would put somebody on suspension with zero open investigation? There was no case, there was no wrongdoing of Miss Del Tondo. Did you ever do any articles protecting your source in terms of finding out why she would be held in a suspension, indefinite suspension until further investigation? Well, what do they need to investigate? They don't have to work with the police. The police have no open investigation. So did you ever notice any connections when you looked into this? Did you look into it? Did you find that there is a connection with a gentleman by the name of Danny Castagna, who is Frank Catropa's business partner with the nightclub Cosmos, who was a superintendent of a neighboring school district, who lost his job, suspended due to DUIs, and hiring a one-time convicted murderer? Did you ever call the PA Cyber and ask them, or put them on the spot about why they would go after Miss Del Tondo's career, if in fact Miss Del Tondo did nothing wrong and there was no open investigation with the police department? I believe that JP wanted to make a change and started up the Beaver County-ian to fight corruption. His plan was to, you know, bring light and change. So here in come the Beaver County-ian. I'm not here to destroy your company at all, JP, or your website or anything like that. I'm here to simply ask questions and paint the other picture that you're painting. Your picture is one color, and a story has multiple colors. And I'm here to make sure that that story has multiple colors. When you talked to Rachel Del Tondo, and she told you that she was in fear of the police, as you put on 48 hours, and that she was in fear for her life. My question is did she ever mention Sheldon Jeter Jr.'s name when she mentioned this? Because my guess is no. Now, did she mention the cops and Mr. Katropa? And my guess, according to the 48 Hours interview with her mom, is yes. But that would be for you to answer. Did Rachel Del Tondo ever tell you that she was scared of Sheldon Jeter Jr.? Did Rachel Del Tondo ever tell you that she went to law enforcement because she felt like she was being stalked by Sheldon Jeter Jr.? Did Rachel Del Tondo ever go to the police and file a police report saying that she thought she was being stalked by Sheldon Jeter Jr.? And all the answers to these questions, they're no. Because I asked some of my sources. That maybe we have the same source on this, but Rachel never was in fear of her life from Sheldon Jeter Jr. But yet 6 months after she makes these statements to you, she's murdered on Mother's Day in her mom and dad's driveway. Doesn't that sound like a message to you? Do you believe, Mr. Paul, that Sheldon Jeter Jr. hacked the police department to put out his own public information as well as Miss Del Tondo's? Do you think that Sheldon Jeter Jr. was responsible for that? He's gonna laugh. He's gonna say no. I'm gonna say okay. So who do you think is responsible for it? And better question, why? Do you think, Mr. Paul, that the cyber school should go public and clear Miss Del Tondo's name of any wrongdoing? They suspended her indefinitely. Do you think that they owe it to Mr. and Mrs. Del Tondo to go on the record and say that we suspended her due to us investigating something and there was nothing founded, so therefore we want to come publicly and clear Rachel? Do you think that that's owed to Mr. and Mrs. Del Tondo? When you actually had a relationship with Mrs. Del Tondo and Mr. Del Tondo, did you ever talk to them or to Rachel about actually her job? There is no teachers union when it comes to the position that she had. There is no teachers union. So in a sense, they can kind of do what they want at this cyber school. There's no teachers union to protect you. But what they can't do is defame your name. So why was Rachel Del Tondo suspended from teaching if there was not an open investigation? If there was no criminal charges filed on her, nothing was happening in terms of her being in any type of trouble with the law, with the police, with anything to do criminally. So why would the cyber school suspend her? And whose call was that? And then again, I bring you back to, did you do the investigative work to know that who has ties to who, and that her ex-fiance, Frank Atropa, his current business partner, whom he had and still has a nightclub with and got one with in 2018, just months after Rachel's murder, they're business partners at Cosmos in Pittsburgh, and he used to be a superintendent and had connections with schools and knew people at this place. Just curious how you felt about that. Mr. Paul, has your website always been a paid site? Did you ever have your site as just ads only and then it was free to everybody? Like, how did you get the word out that you were even starting this, website to give Beaver the news of the century every day? And I believe your options are, you can buy an article, you can pay per month, you can pay per year, and there's different discounts. So Mr. Paul, would you say that you are financially invested in the Rachel Del Tondo case, as well as the Sheldon Jeter Jr. cases? Would you say that you're financially invested in these cases? Mr. Paul, what would you say your ratio is, if you could answer this? Like, what's your demographics of who pays for your website, for your material? Would you say they are predominantly white, Black, Latino, above the age of 18, below the age of 18, Beaver residents? Do you keep those records of what type of demographics you have with your website? How many writers have you employed, at one different time? Do you do freelancers? How do you pick your staff? Do you even have a staff right now? Going back to the, Rachel telling you that she was in fear of her life, let's say hypothetically speaking, because I would love some advice on this. Hindsight's 2020. When Rachel came to you and told you that she was in fear of her life, what did you do about it? Did you go to the police? Did you go to like any of your FBI connections? What did you do? What would you do differently? Because hypothetically speaking, what if somebody came to me and told me that they were in fear of their life? What advice would you give me? If I was to fall in that, if I was to fall in your situation and someone came to me and said that they're in fear of their life, what advice would you give me, Mr. JP? Couple other questions for you. Do you think that Rachel, her family and Sheldon and his family, do you think that they should sue, Aliquippa Police Department, Aliquippa City, Beaver County. I mean, this huge leak and a minor in a car with a reportable figure. I mean, what would you do if that was your kid that happened to? What would you do if it was just you, period, and you were Rachel and your information got out like that? What would you do? Would you sue? Can you sue? How would you go about that? What advice would you give to, you know, Rachel's family and Sheldon's family about that whole ordeal? Do you think that, oh, shift happens? Or do you think that, yeah, no, that's definitely not okay, and there's definitely repercussions for that? What do you think? So I think it's safe to say, Mr. JP, that you and I either, well, let's just put it very simple. We interpret things differently. For example, I was in the courtroom and you were in the courtroom, and there seems to be, you know, discrepancies in what transpired in the courtroom. But is it truly that there's a discrepancy in what happened? Or is there a discrepancy in more or less how we're interpreting what happened? How would you describe that, Mr. JP? Do you think that one of us fell asleep on some of the days and somebody else didn't, and therefore we're interpreting this completely different? Or do you think one of us is just a fucking idiot? But you and I were both in that courtroom on the same days. Not all the same days, but a handful of them. And for example, I know one of the days that I was there and that you were there had to do with the bullets. So I would ask this question for you. Some of the bullets that were in the gun that shot and killed Pugh, they weren't found in the home of Sheldon Jeter Jr.'s house. They weren't found anywhere in the house. Half of the bullets were of the most common bullets that you can find. I mean, most common throughout the world. And then there were some that, the other bullets that weren't, and they weren't in his house. How do you justify that in terms of not being like a question mark? Like, is it any way possible that it questions, especially after hearing the ballistics, and that there is no scientific, if you were in the courtroom, you will know what I'm talking about. That gun is not 100% that's what committed the crime. Like, it was shredded in testimony. So therefore, with it being two different bullets there, two different types of bullets, and the one type not found at Sheldon's, does that not, like, man, what are the odds of that, like, no empty box, it wasn't found in the trash can? Just, where did these bullets come from? Could it be that two different shooters, two different bullet types, brands? I mean, since there was no affirmative of the gun, Also, was there a, the entry points and the trajectory? Did you not wonder why there was no, did anybody talk about what bullets came first, what entry wounds came first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh? I know that you mentioned in one of my lives, you're wondering why the defense didn't call somebody to the stand, AKA a expert. Well, me and you, buddy, we're on the same page about that. It's because the defense didn't do their fucking job. And Judge Tesla made that known. And I'm surprised, did you talk about it in this article that you just wrote? The defense didn't do their job and they made it known. Judge Tesla made it known in this, during this argument. But anybody that knows the process of appeals, this is not the time to be arguing about ineffective assistance of counsel. This is not where that happens. So then therefore that happens down the road, but Judge Tesla is on the record saying what he did say in that courtroom, which, I mean, if you don't think that that's a win for the defense in the courtroom on Friday, then, which we'll go over in a little bit here, but whoo! So if I'm a juror sitting in that room, why would Sheldon kill Pugh? Why? And then why do you keep reporting that Sheldon and Pugh were roommates? You know that they weren't roommates. So why do you continue saying that they were roommates? Did you ever go and interview the person that actually Pugh lived with? Do you know her name? Do you know where she lives? Do you want me to give you her information? Do you know that, like, Pugh used to wear her son's clothes because her son dipped out and went to Cali? Do you know anything about this? Pugh didn't live at 127 Orchard Street. Mr. John Paul, you've lived in Beaver for basically your whole life. You're from there. How many times have you gone out in Aliquippa, had lunch there? How often do you visit there? Have you ever been in Plan 6, Plan 12, Plan 11? Have you ever gone to Uncommon Grounds and grab a cup of coffee, TBJ's, grab some chicken? Have you ever visited any of these places down on Franklin Ave? And the answer is, who knows what they'll be, but so if you've been to Aliquippa at least a couple times, then I think you can answer this question. And I know you've been to Orchard Street at least once to try to do that interview with 48 Hours. How far is Orchard Street from the Dollar General? Do you know how far it is? Let me tell you. Driving a vehicle, it is 2 to 2.5 minutes. So when you were sitting in that courtroom and you saw the video clips coming through and you saw Sheldon, Jeter, Pugh get in a vehicle, the Chevy Traverse, back out, and it says 11:10 p.m. and you see it back out, and then the next clip that they show is at 11:19 p.m. 9 minutes. 9 minutes. And then you're seeing the Dollar General camera. Did it not register to you, Mr. John Paul, that there's no lights from Orchard Street to the Dollar General, and that it takes 2 to a max, 3 minutes is literally pushing it, like, to the max. You'd have to have, like, geese be walking across to impede you from continuing, or some type of animal or person to wreck your path, because there was one stop sign. So did it not register when you were sitting there and thinking to yourself, wow, 9 minutes to get from Orchard Street to the Dollar General camera? 9 minutes by vehicle? Did that not, like, shake your brain a little bit? I know it shook mine a lot. Like, it was like, this isn't possible. That's not the vehicle, or something's missing. Then, and why this should, like, really shake your brain is because then they started showing more clips of when this SUV that belonged to Jeter appears on the camera from two cousins. Okay, two cousins. And it says at 11:35 and 56 seconds. So just for easy math, 11:36 p.m. seen on Two Cousins camera. Jeter makes it home, supposedly, if that's his SUV, from Two Cousins camera, which is all the way down Franklin Ave, makes it back to the next clip that you see at 11:39 and 11 seconds. 3 minutes and 11 seconds. Mr. Paul, are you not sitting in a courtroom wondering how he made it home so quick, but on the way to go, like, to get to where he was going, Orchard Street to Dollar General, 9 minutes? Would you not go back in a deliberation room and say, guys, I don't think this is the vehicle. How would it take 9 minutes? But then how can you ever say that in a deliberation room if you don't even know Aliquippa and you've never been to that area to know that the Dollar General, did the defense show how far the Dollar General was from Orchard Street? Did they pull out a map to say that it's only a mile? Why? I'm going to tell you why. Because either they are part of the problem, or they didn't prepare themselves for trial. Either way, ineffective as fuck. But them's the facts. No, them's the facts is that it does not take 9 minutes to get from Orchard Street to fucking Dollar General. So I want you to tell me, Mr. JP, how that's possible. And why that right there alone isn't reasonable doubt. Right there. Then I'll give you one more. You want me to give you one more? You ready for this one? I don't think you're ready. So let me get this straight, because we were both in the courtroom. Kalisha Williams gets on the stand. She says that Sheldon went there twice to give medicine, the first time of which he went inside and went upstairs. Okay, now I'm gonna take it that you're an iPhone user. I could be wrong, Mr. JP, maybe you're not. But you know, when you have an iPhone watch, you got the iPhone and you have it on you, and when you take steps, what does it do? counts them. Not only does it count your steps, but it counts your flights. When you go up so many stairs with an Apple device on you or your watch on you, after you get to, I mean, again, an expert, was there an Apple expert witness on the stand? Did the defense call it? Nope. Why not? Because the defense wanted all the money for themselves and they didn't want to spend money on people for their case because that would take from their money that they were getting and charging the family. Now, so if you were in a room deliberating, number one, well, it doesn't take 9 minutes to get from those two spots, but that they want us to believe that on the way home, he wasn't speeding, wasn't doing anything crazy, and it took him 3 minutes to get home, but 9 minutes just to get to Dollar General. Then, did either the defense or the prosecution talk about Sheldon Jeter's data, cell phone data? No, it wasn't, was it? Well, hypothetically speaking, Mr. JP, if I was to tell you hypothetically that Sheldon Jeter's data does not reflect him walking up a flight of stairs during the time frame of 11:10 when he left and prior to getting back to Orchard Street at 11:39. So that time, no. And then the first time, between that gap, no. But it registered steps during the time. But his phone and himself and his watch all registered exactly what happened and occurred at Orchard when he would go upstairs and come downstairs and go upstairs and come downstairs. It was getting all those flights. Is it reasonable to think that Mr. Jeter did not go up a flight of stairs? But if you weren't told that, you wouldn't know that, right? Unless you were told about that to show that that witness was in fact lying. Or you could say, or Mr. Jeter didn't have his phone on him, but what if he had his watch on? You'd have to know all these things, correct? Well, did any of this come up in trial? Justice demands answers, right? So the bullets are different. The ballistics person got torn to shreds. The defense just didn't want to spend $5,000 to put somebody on the stand, which you can take that up with the lawyers on why they were ineffective, which Kim Tesla already said they were ineffective. And the bullets are different, possibly two shooters. No motive, 9 minutes to get to that point, which I'm going to say that's not the car then. Or they had to go somewhere before that. So what the heck's going on? Right? Or it's not his car. I mean, what the fuck? Then you have these you got this data, you got all this stuff. And them's the facts, Mr. JP. Just them's the facts. I mean, you're a very smart guy. I won't deny you that. But my question is it doesn't have to be your ego here. This can just be a simple thing as like, yeah, this is only one-sided because the other side wouldn't talk to me. So, and I'm going off of, this one side. Well, so either we have to have somebody like me really show all the facts, or you have to widen your horizon on who your sources are, because you're only painting a one color picture that demands 9 colors. And this is people's lives. I mean, Rachel already lost her life. Do you understand that? Rachel lost her life Pugh lost his life, and now Sheldon, in a sense, lost his life because he's in prison for the rest of his life for a crime he did not commit. And you don't know that, but yet you are just so, I mean, the wording that you're using with your articles, it speaks for themselves, Mr. Paul. In fact, let's look at it. An appellate attorney retained by convicted murderer Sheldon Jeter Jr. squared off against prosecutors in court on Friday. The defense team wants a judge, well, we did go in front of Judge Tesla, but let's see if he uses his name at all. The defense team wants a judge to order a hearing allowing them to further explore their allegations of juror misconduct during Jeter's June trial for the killing of Tyreek Pugh. Prosecutors insist the defense's claim do not provide a legal bias for a new trial and that further proceedings would amount to nothing more than juror harassment. Okay, wait, let's get this straight. Prosecutors insist the defense's claims do not provide a legal basis. There's most certainly case law backing the claims made in court. So I don't know if this is just your assertions, okay? But if you would have taken good notes, you would have cited all the case law that was in Mr. Woods' oral argument. But let's see if you cite any of that here. Prosecutors insist the defense's claim that it's just juror harassment. BeaverCountian.com, the only media outlet. I mean, how many times does somebody want to say this about themselves and get it wrong? BeaverCounty.com was the only media outlet in the courtroom. Oh, I wouldn't be bragging about that if I was you. I just really wouldn't. To observe legal arguments that will shape Jeter's future post-conviction proceedings in county and appellate courts. Both sides acknowledge the issues at hand have a potential of lingering in the system for years. Yeah, there was a potential and is a potential for this if Judge Tesla doesn't get it right. That's what the argument is from the side of the defense. That this could linger on for years in the next phases because this direct appeal here is very crucial because it, how about this, just issue the hearing, evidentiary hearing, hear it, see what happens from it. I mean, why not? She was the neighbor of Rachel Del Tondo, was on the jury. The neighbor of Rachel Del Tondo was the juror in Sheldon's case, where you, Mr. Paul, in 100+ articles, named him, because there's no such thing as a person of interest. Nobody comes up, law enforcement doesn't come up with that term, okay? That's a media term. A person of interest. What the fuck does that even mean? I'm a person of interest. A person of interest of what? Take out on a date? Talk to me about what? A person of interest. That could be a witness. Anybody that was on Franklin Avenue between 1 and 2 o'clock is a person of interest because there was a shooting on Franklin Avenue at 1:30. The arrogance and ignorance of this type of shit, you put it all in your articles for 100+ articles. For 3+ years, you've been talking about Sheldon Jeter Jr. in the media and putting him connected with murders and wrongdoings and shit. but we'll continue. But I'm so glad that you were the only person in there. Harassment was never brought up. Thank you, Delsha. I mean, God forbid that the Beaver Countyans the only person or publication that's in there. How about the lawyers that are in there? Appellate attorney Corey Woods told Judge, oh, here's his first time, Kim Tesla, that too many unanswered questions remain about juror number 3, and that justice demands answers for Jeter's guilty verdict to be trusted. John Paul, what would be so bad about that? Like, this is a person's life. What's so wrong about making sure that you got it right? Especially when there's so many questions surrounding it. And if you can honestly sit there and say that there's not questions surrounding this verdict, you're fucking lying. Period. You're lying to yourself and you're lying to your fucking subs. Defense attorneys accuse the juror of engaging in inappropriate communications with her father about the case. They also say she was the next door neighbor of Rachel Del Tondo, whose 2018 murder, they allege, has negatively impacted the juror's life in personal ways. How about, did they allege that your shitty reporting and your one-sided narrative would affect anybody that plans to be on the jury in Beaver County for this and Rachel's murder? BeaverCounty.com is not identifying the juror by name because law enforcement has expressed concerns about the woman's safety. Okay, so Rachel was concerned about her safety, told you about that, said that she was scared of law enforcement, said the police were following her, and you know who else was following her, and tells you this, but yet one of your sources is the ex-fiance of Rachel Del Tondo, and who, imagine that, ends up with the incident report and the information was handed to him with Sheldon and Rachel's private information, personal. I mean, think about everybody that was in that 48 Hours episode. Matt, Jen, Rachel's parents, John Paul, Frank, Joe. Yep, everybody that's ever talked to John Paul. Get the fuck out of here. Where was, oh wait, that's right, and Santa Cola. Yep, check him off too. Defense attorneys, oh, here we are. Quote unquote, there is a question as to whether or not Jeter was convicted on the facts or on rumors of his involvement in another case. Imagine that. Rumors. Unfounded rumors. Woods told Tesla, I simply do not understand how the Commonwealth doesn't want to get to the bottom of this too. Jeter's, which by the way, we'll get to it. Jeter's prior relationship with Rachel Del Tondo has been widely reported. Reported by who? Who is Jeter's prior relationship with Rachel Del Tondo? Who has it been reported by? This publication 100 times. What? His attorneys have publicly acknowledged he is a suspect in her murder. You said his attorneys. What attorneys? The ones that are going to be in a lot of trouble for ineffective counsel. What I think that you should be making that known when you say his attorneys. No, Corey Woods hasn't said that, and that's who's what is that his attorney? Has McKinney said that? Has Alexis said that? Has Amber said that? Who has said? What attorney has publicly said and acknowledged that he is a suspect in her murder and revealed that prosecutors attempted to get him to admit guilt in her unsolved case as part of any plea bargain? That is true. For the Pugh case, Jeter has steadfastly denied any involvement in the killing of Del Tondo or Pugh. His story has never changed if you actually took a chance to look at it. This is a very good quote here because it's very true. It's probably the best piece of the puzzle here that you wrote. Looking at this verdict as an appellate attorney, I'm scared. This is in quotes. I hope that I can get this argument across with enough clarity that the court is scared too. Woods pleaded, unless we get to the bottom of this, the jury, or at least their verdict, will be clouded by this. I mean, what do you think about your writing there? What do you think about his quote there? Woods wants Tesla to grant him the authority to subpoena the juror and members of her family for questioning in court. He also wants to do other things, which is completely throw out this. I mean, Assistant District Attorney Jordan told Tesla that defense attorneys have provided no evidence of actual juror misconduct. What? She straight up ignored what Judge Tesla told the jury what they can and can't do. Do you not think that that's juror misconduct? I mean, but this is what this is the district attorney, DA. And that the claims being made do not amount to something that would demand a new trial. What? Like, Jordan, do you go home and sleep at night after you say the shit that you say? Because this is some shit that Marcia Clark would say. And she got her ass handed to her. She lived next door to Rachel Del Tondo. So what? That doesn't indicate anything. That is what he on the record said. Quote unquote, she lived next door to Rachel Del Tondo. So what? That doesn't indicate anything. You're right, it wouldn't. Except for the press murdered Sheldon about Rachel's case. I mean, wow. The DA highlighted that juror number 3 was questioned about any knowledge of Jeter during the jury selection process. The woman revealed she may have been related to him through marriage, although she was not certain. She expressed no other knowledge of his name. Defense attorneys asked no questions of the woman before agreeing to having her seated in the case. No, I do not. You know, it sucks in a situation like this because I think that, this is just my thought, is that you want Jeter to be judged by his peers, and it was an all-white courtroom. I mean, like, there's a lot of black people that live in Beaver County. How is not even one black person even summoned to, how are there no black people there to be able to pick from? I'm just curious. And so I believe that that is what, if they did make the ineffectiveness of, not doing their job with this juror, I wouldn't be surprised if it was because they were like, we would love to see some diversity on these jurors, with these jurors. either way, it doesn't matter what they asked or what they didn't. She lied when she answered a couple of the questions, which Mr. Paul completely does not even talk about. If anybody that's been close to you has been the victim of a crime, nope. Oh, just my neighbor. Oh, and Jeter was the person that, I don't know, was basically found guilty through the media. Defense attorneys also alleged that 2 women, in the audience of the courtroom during trial, were heard by another observer discussing the Del Tondo case in proximity to jurors. The DA said that there's absolutely no indication the jurors actually heard any of those alleged statements. Well, of course it's all alleged until you actually do. Everything's always going to be hearsay until you actually, you just ask them. Ask the jurors. What the fuck? Hearsay is part of the process of eliminating if it is hearsay or not, okay? And the way that you get that to be not hearsay is that, let's get them up there. Let's ask them these questions. Let them speak for themselves. But when you have your affidavits being filled out by lawyers, people that are held to the highest standards when it comes to the law, and for the prosecution to say things like, they were using not kind adjectives to describe people that wrote affidavits, and that is just embarrassing for Beaver County. Just lies, just more lies. And see, if John Paul was doing his job, he should be talking about the fact that these are there's 2 attorneys out of from the affidavits that were submitted. 2 attorneys. These aren't schlums off the street, like nobody's ever heard of these people before. So the DA said that there's absolutely no indication that the jurors actually heard any of those alleged statements. The DA noted that the assistant DA noted that jurors had been repeatedly instructed to notify the judge if they were exposed to any outside influence, and not a single one of them had. Well, the jurors were also supposed to be honest when they were asked questions, and they weren't. But let's put that in there, John Paul. Judge Testa, for his part, did not sit silently, as the attorneys argued, asking Woods a series of rapid-fire questions that appeared to show deep, he was being very skeptical of his arguments. Tesla was particularly challenging of Woods about his claims of impropriety by the juror for praying with her father about the case. Yeah, because they made a statement about that God became juror 13 because she prayed on how she was going to cast her vote of guilty or not guilty. She prayed to God. And the way that I believe that Corey Woods would have probably spoke on that is exactly that. Did we have a 13th juror? Was God a 13th juror? Like, ask her if she did this before the deliberations were over. Like what? No, you can't pray. Just that's the same thing. Like, that's why public schools you don't have prayer before you start school, because God and state separate. Court. I mean, what the fuck? I mean, does anybody care about our Constitution anymore? Nobody gives a shit about our laws and rights and rules and what. We can just do whatever we want. It's a joke. I have a question, John Paul. How would you feel if this was like reversed and you knew and you were Jeter and come to find out that a neighbor of Rachel Deltondo was on your... How would you feel about that? Would you be like, oh, it's no big deal? It's no biggie. We're not even getting to the good stuff yet, but it would just be like, no big deal, no problem. I wouldn't care. I'd have a big fucking problem with that. Like, no, what do you mean? You know how many fucking residents there are? How the fuck does somebody get on the jury that's the neighbor of Rachel Deltondo for Sheldon's case against Pugh? I mean, come the fuck on. You'd have a problem with that. Everybody would have a problem with that if it was them. I mean, I just think it's crazy that he's saying so what, and that he's emphasizing it. Let's see. Quote unquote, you think it's undue, which I'm glad you got that spelling right. You think it's undue influence because her father was the 13th and God was the 14th juror. Tesla said, I'm hoping you're not telling me that jurors can't pray because you certainly insinuated that in your brief. No, he did not. No, you cannot pray to God to give you the verdict. Like, what are you talking about? And I hope to God you didn't misrepresent and misquote Mr. Tesla here, Judge Tesla. This is the quote. You think it's undue influence because her father was the 13th and God was the 14th juror? You're damn right we do. She talked to her dad and she prayed and asked God for guidance and to tell her what to do. What would you say that is? That's not how you would pray. I mean, I shouldn't say that's not how you pray. Everybody can pray however they want. But you're praying to God to say, give me the strength to look at the facts and to have strong conviction about where it leads me and, things like that. You're not praying on the verdict. You're not praying for God to tell you if he's guilty or not. But Judge Tesla says, quote unquote, I'm hoping you're not telling me that jurors can't pray because you certainly insinuated that in your brief. Quote unquote, I pray every day that I will be a judge who is just. Oh, shit. Well, what about the Jamie Brown case, Mr. Tesla? Can we talk about what's just? How do you sleep at night knowing that Jamie Brown did not kill Officer Nime? And there's overwhelming evidence that he didn't do it. Just curious. And I'm going to make sure there's extra overwhelming evidence with the podcast. But I pray every day that I will be a just judge. I hope that doesn't mean that there is undue, now it's spelled differently, influence on the court, Tesla said. You think she should be held in criminal contempt because she prayed on it? You want to question her about her religious freedom to pray? No, JP. But if this is what you got from the hours that you were in there, I'm going to pray for you tonight. I'm going to definitely pray for you tonight because this is just unbelievable. Unbelievable. Tesla dissection of Woods' filing and his hammering of questions appeared to frustrate the attorney. It frustrated him, who told the judge he did not feel the court should be bringing up new issues that hadn't been raised by prosecution, which is the truth. He was letting him know that, hey, Judge Tesla, guess what? You're the judge in this case. You are not the prosecutor. So get back to 2021 and get out of the 1999 mode and 2000 mode and 2001 mode where you prosecuted Jamie Brown. Get out of that mode. Okay? You are the judge and you are to listen to the prosecutor and myself argue orally this in front of you. I mean, that's what Mr. Woods was probably letting him know. Because I've seen Judge Tesla in person. And Judge Tesla's a control freak. He's got to be in control. I wonder if he was in control of Linda Barr. Do you think that he had control over Linda Barr? Linda Barr, by the way, is who prosecuted with Judge Tesla Jamie Brown's case. Your Honor, quote unquote, Your Honor spoke for about 7 minutes and brought up about 7 issues, and I'd like the opportunity to respond, he told the judge at one point. So let me get this straight, JP. Somebody that's fighting for somebody else you have a problem with, and so does the judge. Like, they have a problem with the fact that Mr. Woods wasn't going to sit there quietly and not do anything or say anything and not fight for the rights of his clients. I'm sorry, but Corey Woods is not Mr. Santacola. Here we go. Your Honor spoke for about 7 minutes and brought up 7 issues, and I'd like the opportunity to respond, he told the judge at one point. Woods eventually conceded that his mention of God being cooped to a juror may have been an unartful way of arguing his underlining points, but pressed the importance of finding out more about any conversations between the juror and her father. I call BS on that line right there. I don't believe that that's what happened. Because once again, who's been giving us all of our information to date on this topic to do with Sheldon Jeter Jr. and Rachel? Okay, this is the same person that I'm reading from. This is the same person that has given you the narrative that what? Again, what's your viewership, Mr. John Paul? Is it white people, black people? How old are they? Who watches your stuff? Or I'm sorry, who reads your stuff? Who pays for your content? Quote unquote, they have not brought any indication of juror misconduct. The district attorney, the assistant district attorney told the judge. I've read their brief over and over and over again. The affidavits do not do anything to rise the level of jury misconduct. Okay. I have one question for the average to stupid to intelligent human being. If you were told prior to this trial ever starting that juror number 3 was the neighbor of Rachel Daltondo, do you think that that juror would be on the juror? Would they be juror number 3? And the answer is abso-fucking-lutely not, period. So yeah, I mean, with that alone right there, ask yourselves that question. I mean, it's just I mean, what the fuck? And then mix it all up with the fact that I mean, wait, I gotta continue on to see if John Paul mentions that he was named in an affidavit or not. Or does he leave that out? Along with asking Tessa for the evidentiary hearing, Woods also implored him to issue a ruling that insignificant evidence had been presented during the trial to substantiate Jeter's conviction as being the man who shot Pugh. Woods noted the lack of motive presented during the case and the absence of detail provided to jurors about the killing itself, which is 100% true. Quote unquote, it shocked my conscience that we are going to send someone to prison for the rest of their life without knowing what happened. And this doesn't really have to do with motive at all. This has to do with what actually happened. John Paul, what do you think happened up there in plan, what is it? Plan 12, Plan 6, Plan 9. What happened, John Paul? What do you think happened when you sat there and you listened in the courtroom every single day because you haven't missed a day? Did you get, I've never heard what happened up there. What went terribly wrong that somebody got murdered up there? What happened? What led to Tyreek losing his life? It's not about motive, it's about what happened. Like, was Sheldon driving and he was playing country music and Pugh was not having it and said, what the fuck is this shit? And Sheldon snapped. I mean, what happened up there that there was even a murder that horrible night? Do you know? Because I sure as fuck don't. And nobody does. And there was no evidence and nobody testifying to anything as to what happened. This is not about motive, but this is about what happened up there. It shocked my conscience that we are going to send someone to prison for the rest of their life without knowing what happened, Wood said. It's the Commonwealth's burden to establish what happened. I hope it gives the court pause to not know what happened. Isn't that fact right there, John Paul, that it's the Commonwealth's burden? Like, what happened? What happened? Prosecutors acknowledged during the trial that they do not know what led Jeter to kill Pugh. That's not what he's saying, Mr. John Paul. Okay? What Corey Woods is, that's not what he's saying. He's not saying, tell me why Jeter killed Pugh. He's saying, what happened? What happened isn't why. What, why, when, how, where. What and why, two totally different questions. Whoop! Again, John Paul saying, prosecutors acknowledged during the trial that they do not know what led Jeter to kill Pugh, but presented extensive evidence that established Jeter's guilt in the minds of the jurors. The minds of the jurors? The juror that's the neighbor of Rachel Otondo? Okay. The all-white jurors, right? With the neighbor of Rachel Otondo being, I think that the other jurors should be questioned and asked, what type of influence did this person have over your decisions? Or who was split in this room? Like, I don't think that there was, what do you mean? But hey, included in their case were surveillance videos putting Jeter in the area of the crime scene at the time the killing took place. Oh, this is great. This is my favorite part. Okay, so now we get to go to the surveillance tapes. Perfect. Included in their case were surveillance videos putting Jeter in the area of the crime scene at the time of the killing. You know who else was in the crime scene? You know who else was present at the same time? Okay, witness 1, 2, 3, and 4. They were present in at the crime scene at the same time. 1, 2, 3, and 4. You know who else was present in the area at the time of the crime? Police officer Alex Bitts. So, do you know how small that area is? To say like you were in the area. So because you're in the area where a body ends up, because you were in that area, you're guilty of fucking first-degree murder. I'm so fucking proud of you, JP. Woo! Included in their case were surveillance videos putting Jeter in the area of the crime scene, which again is questionable. Is that even the crime scene? Was Keel Street really the crime scene? Was that in fact Jeter's SUV? I mean, I didn't see a license plate. How about all the people that were walking in and out of Two Cousins, the convenience store there? All those people that were walking in and out at the time of the murder, none of them heard gunshots, acted weird, or, oh my God, you hear those gunshots called? Nobody called 911 hearing gunshots. What? Okay. Well, let's just, he's guilty. Jeter in the area of the crime scene at the time the killing took place. Gunshot residue found on the steering wheel of his vehicle. Gunshot residue found on the... Who moved his car? You ready for this one, too? Mr. Bitts likes to get in fucking cars, I'll tell you that. Mr. Alex didn't just move one car that night. He moved 2 cars that night. Are you ready for this? Because it's going to come out and I'm going to love it. Okay, get this straight. Witness Joe Richardson parked his van. Why would an officer ask to get in his van and move it? So this officer got into Joe Richardson's van, moved it. The same officer that then drove away Jeter's SUV. So what the fuck is going on here? There's no signs of you putting gloves on. There's no blanket. There's no nothing. Why would a police officer get in the vehicle of a quote unquote person of interest in a fucking murder, homicide? And this brilliant gentleman moved another vehicle that night. But that didn't come out, did it? Oh, but it will. I mean, I don't know about you, but JP, I don't know how I would feel knowing that not only did the officer get in the vehicle because he drove it away out of the, why would you get in the vehicle and drive away a vehicle that you need to process for evidence? You wouldn't. That should have never made it to the fucking courtroom because it's been contaminated. Not once, but by cross-contamination of then Joe Richardson's vehicle that he got into just a couple hours prior to, okay? He then gets in Jeter's vehicle. Then the car supposedly gets broken down. Meanwhile, Jeter's had no problem driving that motherfucker around. But it breaks down to the point that they have to call, lo and behold, Junax to come and tow the fucker. And then his ass, did he get into it? Oh, but nobody knows who this Dan guy is that was the tow truck driver. Are you on fucking crack? How do you not look at this and think, what the fuck is going on? So an officer gets in his vehicle, then it breaks down, and then a tow truck driver goes there? I mean, what? Did the tow truck driver get in the vehicle? But this is what he's saying is why Jeter is convicted. The surveillance videos putting Jeter in the area of a crime scene at the time of the killing. Gunshot residue found in the steering wheel of the vehicle. Forensic evidence linking the gun used in the murder to the one found on the mattress. That's not true at all. That's a lie. And you need to go back in here and you need to edit that. If not, I'll put you on blast and I'll put it in quotes what the ballistics person actually said. I'm gonna give you a couple books, JP, to read while you're at it. Forensic evidence linking the gun used in the murder to the one found under his mattress, and videotaped interrogations of him providing false and conflicting information to state police. Okay. I would like to know what conflicting information he gave to state police. And please tell me it's from police notes compared to what he said on cam. I can't wait for this. I cannot wait for that. Judge Tesla took the matters under advisement and is expected to issue a written ruling within the next 4 months. You know why it's 4 months? Because you have 120 days. Warning attorneys that his current case docket is severely backlogged. I'm curious what Judge Tesla is backlogged with. Like, what cases? Just curious. Are they like, I mean, do you not think this is like priority? I mean, but for just JP to write that? Okay. Just, wow. Them's the facts right there. Them's the facts. I did some more digging though, and I want to close with a couple things, and I'm going to take your questions, audience, because I love you guys so much. So I have a question, JP, to close out a couple of these things. Isn't it true that you've actually not won any awards by just writing on your own? That everything that's ever been award written has been by it's been like a staff infection, a staff collaboration. So it is technically you've never won any awards for your written work solo. Is that correct? Yeah, my research shows that your award-winning ways involved articles that others were involved with. Is that true? I mean, it's very easily found by looking at the Golden Quill Awards and their winners, which no nominations and I mean, it's no wins for this past. Let's see what else I wanted to ask you about, Mr. Paul. What's your relationship like with Mr. and Mrs. Del Tondo right now? What's your relationship like with Jeter's family? What's your relationship like right now with Joe Percival? Joe Percival. What's your relationship like with Matt Modis and Jen Modis? What's your relationship like with them? When can we expect 48 Hours to do episode 2 to What Happened to Rachel? And Mr. John Paul, isn't it true that CBS paid you a substantial amount of money for doing your work with the Rachel Tondo episode 2, and that your narrative is very important to be pushed that way, and that you have a financial investment in the narrative? And I guess last but not least, but why didn't you mention in your written work here that the district attorney saying that there's no evidence linking Sheldon Jeter Jr. to Rachel Doltando's murder? And in fact, if you did interview on the record the DA, who was never, just so we're clear here, Lozier was not in that courtroom one bit. Lozier wasn't in there for not even a second of this oral argument hearing. So why would you ask the district attorney that wasn't present in the courtroom what was said by his assistant district attorney? And how could he even speak on what was said or what wasn't said and what type of contents it was said in? And if you were in fact in that courtroom, why didn't you actually quote the district attorney on these questionable statements that clearly I made public and that you don't even talk about, but you came over to my channel to put an on the record, quote unquote, of the district attorney that was not present in the courtroom, not for not even a second, about what his district attorney said while he was, oral arguing this case as it pertains to this matter. So I'm just curious as to why you wouldn't interview said party that actually said it. And did you just dial him up on the phone? Did you text him? All right, we're gonna take our viewers. What do you guys think? What award did he supposedly win? You'd have to ask John Paul. It says on his website that he's an award. So yeah, what questions do you have? Journalism sucks, period. Well, journalism doesn't have to suck. It just has to be, fair. And, this just goes back to my philosophy that, and this isn't just my philosophy, this is the Constitution's philosophy. You are innocent until proven guilty, and unfortunately, Jeter was guilty until proven innocent. And I had that talk with the family a couple different times that if, just because it is Jeter, that it sucks, but his defense team is going to have to bring it in terms of you're not just going to be able to say, oh, it's reasonable doubt because they didn't prove their case. That's not what this jury is going to go by. And because it's just that these are the times right now and they need to stop. You are innocent until proven guilty, and that's just not the way it is right now. I believe JP has received money to try to spin this story and put Sheldon in the spotlight to draw attention from the real murderer. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. It makes it look that way. JP, why do you only report on one side of this case? And that's kind of what I asked, have you attempted to, when you say that you're an investigative journalist, I asked one question, which is, have you ever been down to Franklin Avenue? Have you been up to the plans? And all you have to do is literally drive and get in your vehicle from Orchard Street to that family or that Dollar General. And that's going to be a 2 to 2.5 minute drive. So you have to ask yourselves, if you are an investigative journalist, wait a second, 11 to 11:19, 9 minutes, that either that's not the vehicle or something's off. And you can think none of that matters, but if you just put it in your writing that surveillance puts Jeter at the crime scene at the time of the murder, then you're you're going off of that's his vehicle. And I just think that you should really ask yourselves about that vehicle. Let's see. Journalism has completely fallen to the ground. JP, why do me and my family have to keep going through pain and suffering on behalf of your Beaver County and / 48-hour bull crap, which is not facts? There you go. That's a question from the family. Racist is very obvious with him. Well, interesting. I mean, he seems to think that, as well as the assistant district attorney right here. I mean, this says it right here. She lived next door to Rachel Del Tondo. So what? That doesn't indicate anything. That just blows my mind right there. Wow. Like, wow. I found someone who was murdered, so does that mean I murdered them? Yeah, well, I tried to bring this up, and it'll come up, like, evidence that's not in discovery is considered new evidence. That's all I gotta say. Well, when I have a question for him right here. When it says that, let's see. Jeter's prior relationship with Rachel Del Tondo has been widely reported. Yeah, from you. From you. What relationship? What is there anything to report on? Like, widely reported on. Like, Jeter's prior relationship with Rachel Del Tondo has been widely reported. By who? By you. Who? You think, oh, no, this person didn't. No, who do they come to get their information from? I don't even know what to say about that. His attorneys have publicly acknowledged he is a suspect in her murder. Oh, what attorneys? And let me ask you something, John Paul. Come on. If prosecutors attempted to get Jeter to admit to guilt in her unsolved murder, okay, as a part of a plea bargain, why? Why would they need him to admit to her murder if there's this evidence that you speak of? There is no evidence. And the pressure that the DA has felt and Aliquippa Police Department has felt, who is that coming? Pressure on from who? Who's this pressure coming from? I mean, this is the DA's quote after Jeter was found guilty, that this just took a load off of, just the pressure surrounding this case, and he slips. Go listen. You couldn't get him in the Rachel Del Tondo unsolved homicide murder because he didn't do it. But in order to get the hot seat off of your police department and maybe another person, can I ask you this, John Paul? Let me ask you a question. This just never ever made sense with me. If Jeter is this mastermind and Rachel's murder has not been solved to date, There was no murder weapon. I mean, he wasn't arrested for it, nothing. I mean, we want to talk about something that's highly been but that he kills somebody that he's been with all evening, okay, and can like clearly like link up to whatever, and he kills somebody, but not only does he kill them, but he comes back home and sleeps with this murder weapon under his bed and with bullets and magazines sprayed all over his room. And the cops come once and then they leave, and Jeter still doesn't think, oh, maybe I should go dispose of this shenanigans. But yet with Rachel's case, there is no murder weapon. Like, does that not stick? You're not asking yourself, like, why? Like, what? Because it's not the murder weapon. How about this? Why wasn't the mattress taken for evidence to see if there was gunpowder residue? There's no gunpowder. Was it on the gun? Was it on, what was on the gun? What were the DNAs on the gun? There's unknown DNAs on the gun and did not belong to Pew. Was the mattress tested for gunpowder residue? Nope. Why would they need to have Jeter up out of the house with his grandfather and lie to them and act like they can come and get their phone and come and get their car? Why would they need to lie to Jeter to get him out of the house so that they could issue a search warrant? What do you think about that? Just curious. And then why in the crime scene photos is the laptop screen up in one picture and down in the other? Were they planting stuff and it kind of like hit? They couldn't remember if the laptop was up or down. What about, oh yeah, wait, why did they have to lie and tell them that they could come pick up their phone in the car and it was ready? You do know that, right? Why couldn't they serve a search warrant with people present at the house? Why did they have to lure them out of the home in order to serve that search warrant? You don't think that any of that's strange? Because I think that's really fucked up. Because you know what's fucked up about it? Is that it wasn't Sheldon's car. Sheldon couldn't be the one to go pick up that fucking car. Nor could it be Emmanuel Moreland, his great-grandfather, who was like a dad to him, okay? It couldn't be either one of those two people to go pick up that car. And so, like, this is what sucks about it, is that if it would have been somebody that knew a little bit more about the law and about the way that things operate, Sheldon couldn't get that car out of the impound or out of evidence or out of nowhere, because they couldn't release that car to Sheldon because it's not his vehicle. And Sheldon didn't know that. Sheldon didn't know, grandfather didn't know if they were lying to them. some fucked up shit. And it wasn't because they had anything to hide. If you had something to hide, then why wouldn't you be like, no, you're not searching my car? Especially everything after the Rachel Altondo shit. Don't you think Sheldon and the family is like, but they didn't do anything. Yeah, search whatever you want. We didn't do anything. Take the car, take this, take that. They had no issues. Take it. So John Paul, you think it's okay that they lured Sheldon and his grandfather out of that house so that they could be in there, if you could look at the timestamps of everything, so that they could lure them out and so they could then serve this house, because you don't have to have anybody there, you can leave it at the house, and they could then go in and search. If you think that that's okay, that's your prerogative. But it's also my prerogative to say that it's not okay. If you have nothing to hide, you just do what you do, and you just do it. And you do it by the book. So here you go. We're coming in here. But guess what? They try to do that with the Rachel Altondo case and serve the warrant, and everybody was there, and they weren't able to, like, fluff evidence. So we can't have them there this time. So, let's get them out. Let's get them away. It's just a fucking shit show. It's a bunch of lies, and it's a bunch of bullshit. And you can fucking spin your fucking narrative all you want, but I'm going to spin the truth over here. So, and I'm going to make sure that the shit that you've been talking about, you can keep on, but all I'm going to do is show somebody else just, hey, these are the facts that aren't biased. I would say there's 99 reasons that the police department would want to frame Sheldon. And money is the number one reason. Because I think Sheldon and the whole damn family should shoot the living fuck out of all of you people. Leaking my private information, how has Aliquippa or Beaver not been sued for that? Who? That's not okay. Somebody did it. Somebody's held accountable. How has this not been talked about? John Paul, how come you haven't talked about it? Your source fucking was murdered. Your source was murdered after she told you she was in fear of her life. She was murdered. She was murdered. Who was she in fear of? But prior to all of that, her information was completely leaked. How are you okay with that? No, you have the ability to probably find out what the fuck went on. And did you? Did you do anything about it? What'd you do? Oh, there was probably clashing shit. Now I got this source and this source, and oh my God, well, oh my God, what source? What source? Like, and that's the difference between me and you, is that if I was to come across evidence that said that Sheldon Jeter Jr. killed Pugh, you bet your fucking bottom dollar I will fucking spray it and say it from the top of the fucking rooftops. Because Pugh deserves justice. And I would never lie for someone. This is someone's life. This is murder. And nobody should be lied on. And you said, I'm putting people in danger? I'm lying? My narrative's lying? No, it's not, and I'm not. There's no defamation of character going on here. This is simple. I can't question you. No one can question anything anymore. The fuck yeah, we can question everything. Those are our rights. When I walked into anything to do with Aliquippa, I walked in with one thing, which was the real story isn't out there, and I'm gonna find it. I didn't walk in saying this person did it, this person did it, this person. No, I walked in saying whatever's going on and is being portrayed, that's not the facts, and I'm gonna find it. That's what I said. And trust me, I told the family the same fucking thing. Just like I told the Wattses the same fucking thing. I'm just blunt and people can't handle it. But I'll be damned, John Paul, if you keep up this charade. How many people clicked on your Facebook page to get those articles? Not as much as you were hoping or thought or used to get. Hashtag there's a new beaver in town. Good night, love y'all.